Hi, I'm Sandra. I facilitate the memoir writing for seniors program at the Powell Public Library. I am reading a short memoir today by local author Terry Faubert. Terry has been published in most of the memoir anthologies that we've published through the library, but she's also published her own books. In 2019, she published The Way Home, a book-length memoir about a naive young single mother who moved to the wilds of Lund, BC, just up at the top of our piece of coast here, and built her own cabin. So it's all of her adventures through that. And just this year, just in the past few months, she published a picture book called A Cat Called Ballet, also a memoir. And these books are available locally at Oceanside Books and Games, at Paperworks Gallery, and Wolfie's Book Den. And they're also available in paper format, print format, or Kindle at Amazon.ca. You can also check out Terry's author page, Facebook page, and there you can hear her reading some of her memoirs. Today I'm going to read a memoir of hers for you that was published in Taboo, a memoir anthology. So her Taboo story is called Hopeless. I was only a child of 12 when my mother broached the subject of a hope chest. Mine was to be an old bloomer steamer trunk, wide and deep. It had tarnished brass corners and strappings, the inside patterned with a delicate blue plaid. My task was to make household linens to fill it as I grew inexorably towards marriage. Sheets, blankets, pillowcases, tea towels and bath towels, aprons, and finally a matrimonial quilt. A leftover vestige of the dowries of our long-forgotten great-grandmothers. My mother encouraged me to view any education or career I aspired to as temporary, something to fill the time and support myself while waiting for a woman's true calling, that special someone who would propose. Marriage was a dream I eagerly embraced. The idea that I might someday be chosen by someone was very appealing. Yet the word hope left open the possibility of disappointment. Still, my mother seemed confident of the outcome, so I willingly began the first project, embroidering the intricate designs stamped on the ends of matching pillowcases. The many colors of soft skeins of embroidery thread were more inviting than a freshly opened box of crayons. Countless hours were spent choosing the right shade, learning the different stitches, and painstakingly bringing to life the ribbon-entwined umbrellas, spilling their flowers across the pillowcase. Stitch by stitch, ripping out and redoing any that weren't perfect, I slowly added not only cheerful colors, but also texture. I loved to run my fingertips over the smooth bump of the satin stitches and the rough pebbles of the little French knots. As years passed, tea towels were added to the pillowcases in the bottom of my hope chest, but doubt gathered on top of them. As I joined the throngs of young people opposed to the Vietnam War, I came into contact with radical ideas that questioned women's place in society and the inevitability of marriage. By my late teens, I considered marriage an oppressive institution and embraced the idea of free love. The old hope of finding that special someone was trampled by the idea of freely loving everyone, without regard to rules or restrictions. Unwilling to take risks with my body, I needed parental permission to obtain the new birth control pill that had torn asunder my mother's carefully ordered plans. I confronted her in her bedroom one evening. Her dark eyes flashed in anger at my request. Just like the items in my hope chest, I was supposed to save myself for marriage. Her consent was reluctantly given, since, to her, Pregnancy would be a far greater shame and announce my sexual misconduct to the world. According to my parents, the only respectable reason for a daughter to leave home was to marry. Since I no longer expected that to happen, I hit upon transferring to an out-of-town university as my only hope of getting out from under my parents' control. In May 1971, I packed one small suitcase and moved out of their suburban Toronto home and into a house full of students in downtown Montreal. A year later, my parents loaded my old trunk with all my abandoned possessions and shipped it to me unannounced. In the bottom were the hope chest items I had made so long before. It was a poignant moment as I fingered the carefully stitched cloths, remembering the bright hope I clung to in those days. There seemed now no point in waiting, no reason left to hope. I did the unthinkable. I took the items that were to be reserved for that one purpose and began using them. I hung the precious tea towels in the kitchen and stuffed my pillow in the ornate case. Sometimes, in bed, I would feel the ridges of my handiwork and sigh for the loss of that innocent, impossible, childish hope. When my lover and I moved in together, we were careful to call it a relationship, not a marriage. We considered ourselves beyond monogamy or jealousy. No strings attached. Freedom. And yet, I could not help clutching at a fragile strand of hope, as thin as a single thread of embroidery cotton. Hope that in spite of it all, our relationship might last forever. My mother had never given up trying to convince me to marry. On one of my visits, we sat at her kitchen table. She spoke of my love of children and how she couldn't believe I would never have a family. Many months later, she was pained to discover that her words had helped me decide to go ahead and have a child without altering my views on marriage. She tried her best to keep my pregnancy hidden, forbidding my sister to throw a baby shower for me. The forever hope I had secretly cherished flickered, faded, and was finally extinguished when, in spite of our coming child, my lover left. Many years later, I again fanned the spark of hope. The pillowcases had long disintegrated to rags when I briefly flirted with a marriage that finally, irretrievably stamped out any remaining embers of hope, leaving me divorced and happy to raise our 3 young children on my own. Today, I live alone, content to enjoy the solitude of each bright day. The trunk still sits in my basement, its scratched and dented blue surface covered long ago with a green paisley vinyl. It has served me as a bench and a table. I have changed diapers on it and stored Halloween costumes in it. I also kept a scrap of the old pillowcase. It's yellow and stained now, but the umbrellas and flowers still look as bright and hopeful as when they were first stitched. A reminder that what we hope for does not always come to be, and perhaps we wouldn't want it to. That's Hopeless by Terry Faubert. Thanks very much for listening today.